All right. Hey, welcome back to another week with me and Meredith for Business Learning Lab. We are the co-founders of Sparent LLC, which is we are a virtual assistant agency powered by a talent pool of stay-at-home moms. And this week we are talking about qualities in potential new hires that you may be overlooking or not even considering, and therefore potentially you could be losing out on some great candidates to join your team. And so we're just going to go over that today, but would love any sort of participation by you. If you are in a hiring round or bringing new members onto your team, I'd love to hear what you look for in your potential candidates outside the obvious. Right, Meredith?
Exactly. We're not going to spend time talking about, the normal stuff that everyone knows to put on, your job descriptions, that kind of stuff. We're going to try to focus on some of the less obvious details that we have found in our experience with recruiting and evaluating and bringing on VAs that we have found makes a difference in really getting great talent.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'll give you a great example because I've talked to two separate business owners with the same problem in the past couple of months, and that was they were having a high degree of turnover. And so I was asking them a little bit more about that, like what's causing the turnover? Who are you hiring? Like, is this an issue of like them not enjoying the job, or what is it? And it turned out that they were primarily hiring straight out of, the college. So college students were coming to work for them. They thought that that was a great strategy because they were getting people fresh out of school, giving them an opportunity. Maybe these were people that could maybe train up and stay with their organization. But I think what they underestimated is that the stage of life that their hires were in are very transitional stages, right? Like think back to when you were fresh out of college, bright-eyed, bushy-tailed, your whole future is ahead of you. So, and you're also exploring, right? You're getting to know yourself and your own career path. So you're not likely in today's workforce, you're not likely to start a job and stay there for a long period of time when you're in your early 20s, right? You're exploring what you want to do with your life. So this was not necessarily not a toxic work environment or a bad place to work, but because they hadn't considered enough the stage of life that their main source of candidates were coming from, they were having a high degree of turnover. So I think it's important to think about that when you're sourcing potential hires. If you're relying on one particular source and they have a commonality in their stage of life, does that stage of life work with the goals that you have for your staffing needs? Does that make sense? Does that make sense?
Yes, it totally makes sense.
Okay.
And I think the other thing that kind of reminds me of another point that we have talked about in the past, which is overestimating or putting too much weight into sort of boxes to check off on a resume. So one of those being a college degree is a very common baseline for a lot of organizations. I mean, I think we've all seen, the ads like must have college degree. Doesn't matter in what, they just have decided that the fact that you've gone through college means something. And it does, it can absolutely, and every industry is different. However, there are a lot of people, especially if we are looking for more seasoned adults, if we're moving away from that fresh out of college season of life, as you're talking about, maybe people who are starting on a second phase of their career or just have, been in an organization for a long time and want to move on. They've been in the industry, they have the skills, they've learned on the job, or they've had certification training, but they don't have a traditional degree to be open to that, because you'd be amazed, especially certain tech fields, especially people fields, where it's all about the experience of working with a certain population or a certain type of customer, life experience, job experience versus book experience, I think gets underrated so often. And so many really smart, talented people get passed over for really great positions simply because they don't check these sort of arbitrary, somewhat arbitrary universal boxes.
Yeah, I completely agree, Meredith. Of course, I always agree with you. And you absolutely walked into my second point, which was don't overlook the self-taught candidate, the candidate without a degree, the candidate without that traditional career path in your field. And I can give you a couple of examples, like from within the walls of Sparent. We don't have walls, we're virtual, but whatever. And we have brought on, we've had a big hiring round recently. And two of the candidates I brought on, if I just looked at the surface of their work history, I might not have considered them. It wouldn't have seemed like an ideal background for a virtual assistant role. But we always, try to look beyond the surface because we don't want to miss out on having excellent candidates. And one of these two candidates, I really liked a couple of things that really made her stand out was that she was teaching herself like three different things, including a second language and a couple of, digital skills. And she was teaching herself because of her own curiosity and thirst of knowledge. And that impressed me so much that she became a considered candidate. We brought her through to that test assignment, phase where she's working for us internally. She blew me away. She absolutely, performed really well, communicated well. She did everything I would want in a virtual assistant. The second candidate primarily worked as a professional nanny. And but again, I was like, oh, this does not look like an ideal candidate on the surface. But then on this tiny little 2-sentence addition on her resume, she mentioned that she had organized a banned book movement in her community. And, a total grassroots bootstrapped effort that ended up going viral, got the attention of a famous children's book author. She ended up getting over 4,000 books donated to her initiative. And in order to do something like that, that tells me a lot about a person, about their commitment, their communication, social media, marketing savvy. So many, skills have got to be deployed in order to pull something like that off. And guess what? We brought her through the vetting process and the onboarding process, and she is amazing. And I cannot wait to get her busy on client assignments because she's just delightful and has so much to offer. And we would have lost out if we had not considered those two candidates.
Absolutely. And I think the notion of looking for signs that someone is a problem solver, that they are a learner, that they have flexibility. And a lot of times that comes through in the other parts of the resume than their job experience. Like you're saying, it comes through in their hobbies and their interests in, over the span of my career, I've heard back and forth of yes, put on your interests and hobbies, and no, don't put on your interests and hobbies on your resume. I firmly believe they should, because as you just said, that brought us two candidates who we would otherwise have passed by. But also because I think if you are someone who has really interesting hobbies or interests, or you're really involved in your community, or you run the community outreach program at your church, or you run the school fundraiser, whatever it is, that's important to know, and that you want to work for a place that values that values that you have a life outside of work. We're all about that. But also that they appreciate what that means about you as a person, that you have this flexibility. I mean, so often when, we see people get hired on these very traditional, just sort of like, you have the degree, you've 5 years experience, blah, 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 and they get in the position and then they are not particularly flexible. They are not a dynamic thinker. They're not a great problem solver. They just want to do the thing that they know how to do, and that's it. We hear a lot of frustration from clients that we talk to for exactly that reason.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think a lot of this, actually leads us to my third set of qualities that I don't want employers to overlook, and that is a combination of soft skills, right? I can't value that. We can't value them enough at Spearint. I hone in on them primarily. Yes, hard skills are nice, like if they know digital tools and all of that. It's great. It's great to see. It's not that it's not valued, but to me, those things can be trained if somebody has the right set of soft skills, where they're curious and they love learning and they're organized and they're good communicators and they're great writers. Oh, great writing is probably not a soft skill; it's probably a hard skill.
That's
But but whatever. They're enthusiastic. They have a great attitude. Like all of these things, like come together to make such a great candidate. I think for any position, for any role. Do you agree with that, Meredith?
Of course I do.
Yeah.
So so I think that's a really great. All of that is a really great point, and there's a lot more we could talk about, and this also goes into what a topic we'll probably talk about another time in terms of diversity and having a commitment to diverse workforces. Also, this touches into that and a bunch of other stuff. But this is a big part of what we do at Spearint is the vetting, and we've really fine-tuned the process. So we have a lot that we can talk about and share. We're always learning new stuff every day. So
yeah, I love finding great candidates. I love the vetting and onboarding process with new candidates, and I love finding like the I don't know diamonds in the rough, right? Because you know what? Thank you for overlooking a great candidate because we are happy to bring them into the fold and add those jewels to our talent pool. One last thought that's just fresh on my mind, somewhat on the topic. I happened to catch a creator on TikTok, and she is madly looking for work. She's been applying for lots of jobs, and she said two different times, two different potential employers asked her the question if she was interested in work-life balance. And her answer was yes, I'm very interested in work-life balance. Both of them ended the interview process and said, we will no longer be moving forward with your application.
what?
True story.
Oh my gosh. That's crazy. Well, she dodged a bullet.
She dodged two bullets.
That's terrible. No. Most companies have the wherewithal to pretend.
They weren't even hiding it. They did not want her to have work-life balance.
That is
good luck to you. Yeah.
Disturbing. That's very disturbing.
Disturbing is the right word for this. Yes. All right. So we are at our time for our business learning lab. We will be back next week, hopefully with some other wonderful nuggets of knowledge to share with you. Again, all of this comes from our experience running businesses and lessons we've learned along the way. We would love to hear from you as well. We'll see you next week.